During the time that I was on the clinical faculty at Baylor College of Medicine, I was in contact with each of the four chairmen of the department. The first one was James Green, who put the department together and brought in cardiologists and endocrinologists and other doctors with specialties to build a department. He was rather nervous, I thought. He had a kind of nervous giggle and smoked incessantly. The second was Ray Pruitt, who came down from the Mayo Clinic. He was described as being cerebral. He was tall, thin, spoke quietly, without hesitation, and wrote extremely well. The third was Henry McIntosh, who was a native of Florida, was interested in probably most all aspects of internal medicine. He was thin, tall, well-spoken, and primarily interested as a teacher in making sure the house staff at Methodist Hospital was well taken care of. The last one during my clinical time at Baylor and Methodist was Tony Gatto, whose prime interest and who was a world authority on lipids, primarily cholesterol. But I want to talk about my contact with Henry McIntosh. It was unusual and totally unexpected. Henry had a planned meeting, I think every Friday, late in the afternoon, about 4, at which teaching staff and clinical staff and house staff were expected to attend. He usually brought up matters that concerned him. I don't think there was anything unusual at that meeting. And finally he said, does anybody have anything he'd like to talk about? I raised my hand. I said, Dr. McIntosh, we dictate our admission and history and physicals and discharge summaries to be transcribed. And when they're typed up, the print is so small, it's very difficult to read. Can that be fixed? He said, well, Dan, and he reached in his pocket, brought out a tiny magnifying glass. He says, most all of you have one of these, and you can use this and ought to be able to read the summaries. I felt the blood rush to my head, and I knew that my face was red, but I didn't say anything. In a few moments, the meeting was over, and when I got up, I knew I had to do something. I decided I would go talk to Henry and talk to him about what I considered a put down. I went back to his office, and on the way I began to think about what I was doing. It was not like me to express my anger, and I seemed to have got along like that, but this was so unusual that I continued on my way. And then I remembered Henry had been in the service in World War II. After college, he had been in parachute training. He had been in combat, hand-to-hand combat training. What if he were to get up and wrestle with me and pin me down to the floor and tell me to mind my own business? I thought that wouldn't happen. So I continued to his office. His waiting room was empty. His secretary was there, and I asked if I could speak to Dr. McIntosh. She said, he's on the phone. As soon as it's finished, you can go in. I went over and sat down on one of the chairs and looked for something interesting to read. To my amazement, he had literature, journals from Russia, literature extolling Russia's grain output, the cars they were producing, the buildings they were erecting, the structural iron they were making. My God, the man is a liberal. Again, I felt, how can I express my anger to someone who feels about many things the way I do? But before I could decide one way or another, the secretary said, you may go in. Henry was in his desk chair, leaning back somewhat, sort of on his right side, and looked at me. And I said, Dr. McIntosh, at today's meeting, telling me that I needed a magnifying glass to read summaries, I felt you had put me down. I didn't like it. And I want you to know I don't expect you to ever do that again. He didn't say anything. I turned and walked out. I felt that I had done what was right. At the Christmas party that year, I was fixing myself a drink when Dr. McIntosh came up to me. He said, I want to talk to you about one of the residents. I don't know whether I can give him my approval to be able to take the internal medicine boards. If I don't give him approval, he won't be able to take the boards and he'll never be certified. I thought, he's asking my opinion. He's not carrying any unhappy feeling about our get together. I said, Dr. McIntosh, I think whatever you do will be correct. And I wished him a Merry Christmas. And so the incident came to an end. I'm so glad I expressed myself. It was good for me. I don't know if it's any good for Dr. McIntosh, but that was not important.